Hey y'all, welcome back. I guess today y'all just gonna have to put up with me. I'm sorry about that, but Megan and the kids both had something they had going on. For me today, or this evening I guess I should say, is gonna be kind of focused on cover crops. I know we talked about them in the last video where I sowed these gardens here at the house in my crimson clover, but today I'm gonna try to get my potato patch and the popcorn patch planted in a mixture of crimson clover and wheat. I think is what I've got. I can't remember what I got. I'll have to look, but I believe I got crimson clover and wheat. But before I get started, figured I'd give you an update on how the cover crop out here in the garden's doing. So if y'all can remember, I just scattered this seed out on top of the ground without mixing it in or anything. And I mean, I think you could say I've got pretty good germination here. Probably not as good as if I'd have covered the seed up, but we had perfect weather right after I threw this seed out. We had a couple of days of rain and it just worked out great. And look at my peas. We might have peas to harvest before long. Man, I'm excited about that. I think we might have got the timing right on these peas. Look at this right here. Look at that. Beautiful pods of peas and still plenty of blooms left to come. However, they're growing up my trellis, but every one of them are kind of laid over to the side like they don't really want to grow up that trellis. I don't know why, but I have a hard time training peas to grow up a trellis. Just look right there. That whole bunch has been over this way. So I'm not going to stress too much over it. They'll just kind of do what they're going to do. Me and Maggie cleaned up her flower garden the other day though. Don't that look so much better? Looks a whole lot better. But then over here in the other part, where I've still got stuff growing, we have a bunch of clovers coming up in amongst it too. So all the green that you see right now is mainly the grass that I mowed down. That should get killed out when the frost comes, which will probably be here in a few weeks. But we got some really good germination on that clover out here on this patch too. So seems that though my method of doing the cover cropping here worked out pretty good. I'm happy with it. I just hope this grass dies out soon enough that it doesn't end up smothering out my clover, which I guess could happen. So anyways, I wanted to give you a quick update on how all that looked. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out so far. Now we're going to hook up the turning plow, and I'm going to turn those two patches up there before I actually disc them up and sow my cover crop. I will say normally I wouldn't do that, but I kind of want to reshape the field, and the best way to do that is with a turning plow. And on occasion, I haven't turned either one of those fields in about I haven't turned those fields since I very first turned them right after we bought that land and cleaned it up. So it's been at least 3 or 4 years since those fields were turned. And in my opinion, I don't like doing it a lot. Now, I'm going to tell you, I know turning land is kind of a controversial thing of whether you should or shouldn't do it. But I think here with our clay, it helps to just flip everything every so often. And you mix up all of it, it tends to loosen up and work it down deeper. And then in the spring, after I've turned it, I'll go in with a chisel plow and bust up that hard pan that you get right under your turned layer, which I'll show you when we get up there and start turning what I'm talking about. But I just feel like every so often with this clay, it really needs to be turned. And I don't know, I feel like it helps it. So I need to drag this drag out of the way so I can get to those plows. Make sure everything still looks good on those, yeah. It's been a while since I turned any land. Oh me, I'm way off on that. So this is the potato patch where we had the potatoes planted this year. And this is the first one I'm going to start on. Now earlier I said I wanted to reshape the land. So this field has a gradual slope up that way. Now it does slope that way quite a bit, but up this way it's got a gradual slope. And so you can see from about 3 years ago, y'all probably can't tell it, but there's just a little bit of a furrow there where I plowed this field, and I plowed it all that way, plowed it that way. This year I'm going to plow it that way and fill in this furrow, and somewhat in theory take this slope and bring up dirt down here and do away with it up here, so to kind of level it out this way. I hope that makes sense, but you can really change the lay of the land with a turning plow, especially over time. If you plow a field in the same direction over and over and over, like, you'll completely change the lay of that field. And most of the time when you plow with a turning plow, one year you'll plow one way, the next year you'll plow back the opposite way to keep that from happening. However, if you do intend to change the way a field lays over time, you can totally do it with a turning plow. Just do it, you know, plow it one direction one year, then the following year plow it in that same direction, and you'll eventually get the shape of that field changed. That's not exactly what I'm after here, but I do want to fill all this in and have me a furrow running across the top side of the field, because that furrow will catch water and direct it out of this field, and that way maybe I don't have quite the erosion that I had in this field back in the spring. I'm going to see anyways. That's my thought process here, but we'll see. So plowing it in this direction, I'll have to start down there and come up the hill with it, and then I'll just work my way this way, and each run I'll plow it. I'll throw the dirt like that, throw the dirt like that, throw the dirt like that. And then after that, we'll get the popcorn field, we'll plow it. Now with that one, I want to throw the dirt all towards this way, towards the road. So this will take me a second to get the plows set up and everything. Once I put the plows down, I'll know which way I need to adjust things to get it right. But no more plowing this here. Lots of times when you've got little patches like this, you end up finally getting everything adjusted right by the time you're done. So, but anyways, let's see what kind of mess I can make. And when you turn a field, you also turn all the stuff you got on top under the ground. And so I guess it kind of helps that break down too, and it puts the plant material down deep where your roots are going to be. With the turning plow, I'm only going to be plowing about 7 to 8 inches deep, I think anyways. That's a monster buck track right there. They're all in this field. It's kind of what I figured. Good luck with getting my cover crop to grow, because they'll probably eat it down faster than it can grow. this field right here is plowed. You see what I'm talking about? There's a furrow down across here now, so any water that sheds off of this way into the field should now run that way instead of running out into my field. In theory, hopefully causing a little less erosion in this field where it is on the slope. Plowed up really nice. It is a little bit on the wet side, probably a little wetter than I'd like it to be, but it's just going to have to be what it's going to be right now. And what will happen is now that all this has been flipped, you see there's some clods and stuff up there. It's not bad, but there is some clods there. Some of this will get busted up when I run back over it with a disc, but what clods that are there left after that will freeze out over the winter, and this right here will be just like powder come springtime. But it's always amazing to me when you plow a piece of land, especially in our area, just how many different shades of soil you have in it. See, like we have from bright red clay to brown loamy looking stuff, to the center right there's got some sand rock, and then on down yonder at the end is like more of a brownish type loamy type soil. And then earlier I mentioned a hard pan that gets created when you plow. What I'm talking about is each time your plow runs, look at that right there's, what is that? That's like gray clay. That's not a color soil you normally see around here. That's interesting. Anyways, there's a hard pan right here where the plow slid across the ground. As you can see, we're about, I don't know, we might be closer to 10 inches deep right there. But anyways, when I come back in the springtime, I'll run a chisel plow through here, and them shanks will go deep. They'll bust up that hard pan that was created from plowing it. But there's one. Now to the next one. That's a bad thing about plowing land, but it's got weeds and corn stalks on it. That stuff will stop your plows up every time. Well, I got that one plowed now too. Simply amazing the different types of soil from just this field right here to that field. This field works so much better soil over here in this field. You can see some dark tints out there. All that That's actually where we burnt the brush from when we cleared this place. Because for those of you who may not know, this is the other 9-acre tract that's the same piece of original farm that's the other 9-acre tract that we just bought. And when we bought this 9-acre tract like 5 or 6 years ago, all of this was just growed up brush, just nasty. You couldn't even walk through here. And so we cleared off the level parts of it and turned it into a mini orchard and 2 garden patches. Anyways, the dark spots is where we burned the brush pile, and that's some of the ash and stuff left over from that. And that has been some of the best growing soil that we've had up here because of that ash. But anyways, this is done. I actually accomplished what I wanted to do. I shifted all that dirt over this way, filled in my furrow I had over here, and then knocked down like a ridge that had formed right here. I knocked that down. So now my field is good and somewhat smooth. And something I also done was the way this field was shaped, it wasn't a perfect square. So it would always work out that you'd have a short row on that end of the field and then you'd run out of field right here. So I left my plows down and just straightened this up. So now I got a perfect rectangled field. And I done the same thing on that one because it worked out to have a short row as well. And I left the plows down and straightened it up. So now I got a perfectly rectangle field over there too. But I have been thinking about something here. I don't really watch many reels and stuff like that on YouTube or Facebook or something. But when I do, of course, they're farming reels. Well, I have those reels that occasionally pop up of the, I don't know what country they're in. They don't speak English. But apparently they do a lot of farming there. Because those type of reels pop up all the time, and they showed a field that they turned just like I just did, and instead of disking over it to smooth everything up, they just run a cultipacker over it and got their seed bed ready before they planted. Well, I got a cultipacker sitting right here in the edge of the woods, and since this soil is wet, you know, and you don't really want to work your soil no more than you have to, I was kind of wondering what it might be like to just run, since I'm only sowing a cover crop anyways, I'm not preparing it for an actual crop. I'm wondering what it might be like just to run that cultipacker over it, somewhat smooth it up, sling out my seed, and then run the cultipacker back over it to pack the seed into the soil and let it ride at that. And I think that might be what I try to do, because while that field is not near as bad, this field right here is wet. And I could actually get by with just slinging the seed out there, because you got all these little divots and everything the seed will fall down in. However, where I'm using clover seed, and that's such a tiny seed, I'm afraid that with all those little lumps and bumps and everything else, that it would end up just being too deep in the ground and wouldn't come up. So I believe I'm going to try that with the cultipacker. So before I go home, I'm just going to unhook my turning plows up here, and I'll hook up to that cultipacker and see what it does. If it doesn't do what I want to do, then I'll go home and get the disc and we'll go with that route. I believe that I proved to myself, as long as we get the amount of the rainfall we need, especially with those clover seed, they don't exactly got to be covered up that great anyways. I think I proved that to myself up there on the garden at home. Slide out my belly bar, a drawbar, whatever you want to call it. Not quite far enough. See what that'll do. Alright, I determined real quick that wasn't going to work. And it would work if my tractor tracks wasn't sinking up so deep. And what's going to happen with that is it's going to create a rut in the field. And that rut will create a ditch, and over the winter I'll end up with a big old ditch in my field. So we're not going to do that. But actually I probably will run the tiller over it instead of my disc. But once you get it, run it over with that, it'll pack that soil back down just a little bit. And I won't be leaving near the rut that I'm doing right now with the tractor. So, all right, well, scratch that. It ain't gonna work here in this clay. That's probably the problem, it's clay, and the soil's a lot tighter soil, so when it flips over, it stays standing up. If it was really loose, loamy soil, it would fall on down, and then it would already be packed down instead of my tracks packing it down. But I just wanted to give it a shot. It didn't work. Honestly, I didn't expect it to work, but I wanted to try. So let's go back to the house and hook up, I guess, to the tiller. I think. I don't know. I'll think about it between here and there. We'll either hook to the tiller or to the disc one. Well, I know y'all gotta be going now, what in the world? I thought we were sowing cover crops. What are we doing over here shelling popcorn? Well, I made a decision. I looked at the forecast, and we're not oops. I looked at the forecast, and we're not supposed to get rain for another about day and a half, 2 days. And as wet as that ground is up there, I said, well, you know, I don't got to be in a hurry to finish up that. Let's let the ground dry out just a little bit so I don't make a mess when I go back up there to till it. And let's just take some time this season to shell some popcorn. So that's what I'm doing. Definitely not going to get all this shelled today. I mean, there's way too much here to be shelling for me to. I'd be here till probably way after dark shelling if I finish this by myself today. But I got several of these little popcorn shellers here, and they're made just for popcorn because they're made for something that's got a small cob on it. Now those hand crank shellers, they do work on popcorn, but with this Japanese hulless, they don't work that good because, see how small that cob is? They don't work that good because this whole thing will go through that sheller and it not shell nothing because it's so small. Because that right there itself is about the same size as a regular cob after it's done been shelled. So you have to do this Japanese hulless by hand. At least this is the best way I've found to do it. But these little shellers here just make it pretty easy. You can fly through it pretty quick. It's just one of those things you just got to get to it and do it. But I believe these come from Premier One. I ordered them off of Amazon, but I think Premier One is the people who sell them. But anyways, I'm not going to bore y'all with me standing here shelling popcorn, so I guess I'll just catch back up with you tomorrow evening when I decide to go up there and finish planting that cover crop. And I did look, I'm going to be planting vetch, crimson clover, and then I've also got some winter wheat that I'm going to be throwing in the mix as well. Well, it's the next day. I just got in from work a little bit ago, and I got my cover crops on here, my seeds. I have crimson clover, hairy vetch, and common wheat. I'll be mixing all three of those together for these plots right here. Take and run the tiller over them and see how well it cuts up. It looks like it dried out a lot today. It's been nice and sunny today, so I think it ought to work up really good now. At least I hope anyway. That one, I am 100% pleased with how well that right there worked up. Took me 2 passes, but man, that looks nice. I don't suspect that one's going to look quite as good. Well, I must admit, that one right there worked up better than I thought it would too. There's definitely some clods out there, but like right here. This area is pretty cloddy. but that'll be okay. I've actually got a big old pile of wood chips across the road over there that I was planning on putting in manure spreader and slinging them out on both of these patches here just to try to loosen up some of that clay and add some organic matter back to the soil. But those wood chips ain't broke down yet, not like I'd like them to. They've been sitting there for a year and they're still pretty wood chippy. So I think I'll give them a little while longer before I spread them out. I really wanted to do it on that field because if y'all can remember, I've talked about it in the past, that field right there is a pretty poor field. But anyways, we'll get these seeds stirred out, then we'll run the cultipacker over it. Normally I don't fertilize my cover crops or anything, but that one especially, I'll keep my eye on it. If it starts looking a little shabby or looks like it's missing something, well, I'll probably go buy me a bag or two of fertilizer and sling out over them, because these are 2 tiny fields, so 2 to 3 bags max will be all I need. But anyways, the sun is trying to go down on me, so I'm gonna see if I can't get these seeds out and get this done before it starts getting too late in the evening. Well, I think it's pretty obvious, but I got my seed from Hoss on this part, on this. Y'all have heard us say it plenty of times before, but there's always a link in the description and on our website for Hoss stuff. So I'm gonna try to do a third of this bucket in wheat, third in clover, and a third in vetch. I'll mix it all together and save myself a couple of trips by just slinging it all at one time. Well, believe it, I'll have to sharpen my knife. I did not realize vetch seed was that big. I've planted stuff with vetch before, but it was always in a mixture. I guess I never realized which seed was the vetch. Alright, that's mixed up pretty good. I'll be lucky if these cover crops grow anyways, because all 3 of these things deer love. And there's plenty of deer up here to eat them. Boy, this soil worked up like a powder puff. I'm sinking up in it. Alright, I got that field there done now. And so I don't have to unhook the tiller and hook it back up. I'm just going to take the tractor and everything back to the house and grab my side-by-side. I'll hook the cultipacker to the side-by-side and run over that real quick with it, and I'll be done. Look, Beautiful sunset this evening. So it's not going to be long at all, and it's going to be dark, so I got to get moving. All right, my shoes are full of dirt and seed. And I don't know if y'all can tell it or not, but it's all but dark. But I got something to show you. The moon is beautiful. Look right there. It is huge tonight. I guess that about wraps it up for this video. That's one more thing off of my to-do list before winter gets here. So I am happy that right there is done. That's like putting icing on the cake. It's done. I could just sit right here and look at that moon the rest of the night. I know the camera ain't doing it justice. It's absolutely gorgeous. Man, that's the perfect picture. But anyways, y'all, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like I always say, hope you might have learned a little something, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all have a good one.